Welcome to this first style study session for the Brewers Anonymous BJCP training program. We're finally going to judge some beers, at least I hope we are. I know I will be. This is a great opportunity to get some practice in if you want to follow along, but can't do that until we get started, so let's get right into it. We are doing the very first substyle listed in the 2021 guidelines, and that is 1A American Light Lager, part of Category 1, American Standard Beer. So we're going to start with the vital statistics. That is important information for the beer. It's important for brewing, but it's not something we're going to be judging the beer against because we won't know the statistics of that particular beer. But let's get through these and then we'll get to the stuff that we need to know for the judging portion of this beer. So vital statistics start off with the original gravity range is 1.028 to 1.040. The final gravity range is 0.998 to 1.008. IBU range is 8 to 12. SRM range is very narrow at 2 to 3. And the ABV range is 2.8 to 4.2%. So, overall impression, according to the guidelines, says a highly carbonated, very light-bodied, nearly flavorless lager designed to be consumed very cold, very refreshing and thirst-quenching. Aroma. We have light malt aroma optional, but may be perceived as grainy, sweet, or corn-like if present. Light spicy floral or herbal hop aroma optional. While a clean fermentation profile is desirable, a light amount of yeast character is not a fault. All right, moving on to appearance, we have a very pale straw to pale yellow color. White, frothy head, seldom persist, and very clear. Flavor for 1A American Light Lager. Relatively neutral palate with a crisp, dry finish and a very low, grainy, or corn-like flavor that might be perceived as sweetness due to the low bitterness. Low floral, spicy, or herbal flavor optional, but is rarely strong enough to detect. Low to very low bitterness. Balance may vary from slightly malty to slightly bitter, but is usually close to even. Higher carbonation may accentuate the crispness of the dry finish and clean fermentation profile. And then finally, in those characteristics that we need to know that we're going to be making notes on our judging sheet about mouthfeel, very light, sometimes watery body, very highly carbonated with a slight carbonic bite on the tongue. Now, the commercial examples for this should be relatively easy to find one, at least for anyone watching this in the United States, certainly in the Central Florida area. And the commercial examples listed are Bud Light, Coors Light, Grain Belt Premium Light American Lager, Michelob Light, Miller Lite, and Old Milwaukee Light. And I do have one down here below under camera, and it is a Coors Light. And I have no recollection on when the last time I might have had one of these is. My best guess would be possibly for my judging exam when I took it, but I really don't know. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour a sample, and I'm going to kind of rattle off the things off the top of my head that I notice about this beer, or at least that I should say I observe on this beer, and then I'm going to check them against the quick sheet to see if I'm pulling out any of these specific things that I should be getting. Then I'm going to go do a full beer score sheet on this, but to get started, I need the beer, so let's crack this open, or I suppose in this case, twist this open. Easier said than done when it's soaked in condensation. Okay, finally got it going here. All right. Let's take a pour. See if I can get that on camera. Move my hands a little bit. Should pour a little aggressively to try to get a head going there. And, well, appearance, I'd definitely say that it's lighter than it is on camera. I'm looking at my monitor here, and it is lighter. It's definitely under yellow. Not quite pale straw, but under yellow. It's certainly clear. Condensation's already starting to come up on the cup to kind of make that look not so clear, but it is clear. Did have a white head on pour. It's pretty small. I'd say could have been frothy. If I had poured a little higher and a little more aggressively, I probably could have got a more frothy head on that, but it definitely dissipated. So let's check out the aroma quick. Oh, that is quite sweet and grainy. Yep, it's definitely got that base malt character, that kind of sweet. What I would think would be Pilsner malt. Of course, I don't know what was in this. I wouldn't know in the beer I'm judging. Definitely got that sweet malt and just a hint, ever so slightly, of floral hops. Now, flavor-wise, It's actually surprisingly less flavorful than the aroma lets on. And it's that same sweet malt, but watered down, actually. It's quite thin. That hop aroma I was tasting, maybe there's a little bit of floral on there. I'm not quite sure. It's leaning towards dry and practically no bitterness. There's a little bit of bitter sensation on my kind of on the finish and the aftertaste, but I wouldn't call that a bitter characteristic. So let's see what we got here. So as far as aroma went, we should have got a low, grainy, sweet, corn-like malt aroma. Well, everything but corn. Light, spicy, floral, hop, optional. We had a little bit of that. Clean fermentation. I didn't note that, which I would want to do on my score sheet, but it definitely did have a clean fermentation profile. Appearance, very pale straw to medium yellow. Right, frothy head that dissipates. I'd say that's kind of what I got out of it. I bet on a better pour, I probably would have gotten that exact description. Very clear, flavor, neutral, palate, crisp, dry finish. Sure, yeah, I think I got that. Moderately low to low grain or corn-like. Moderately low floral, spicy, or herbal hop. I got none. And low to medium, low bitterness. A little bit low, enough that I could actually notice it on the finish and the aftertaste. May vary from slightly malty to slightly bitter. Definitely, I would say more slightly malty than anything else. A mouthfeel, which I didn't note, so shame on me. Low to medium bodied, barely highly carbonated, but I would say, having read that now, that's accurate. All right, I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to fill out a score sheet. I'm going to fill out the full score sheet. We will be moving into the exam score sheets eventually, but let's not do that yet. For the first few here, we'll do the regular score sheet. They're available to download and print out in the exercise files below this video. Not only do I recommend you following along the style studies to learn the beers, but I do also highly recommend writing out score sheets, because you will have no other option but to write them out on your judging exam. And the practice on that is as valuable as the information on the beers themselves that you'll be taking with you in that exam. So I'm going to pause this, going to fill this out, and then we'll come back and we'll see what we got. Okay, I'm back. I have my score sheet. Got a little beer left over. And if you filled out your score sheet too, cheers. And I'm going to start off. First, I'm going to start off just to show you this. Even though I made some things up here, like the entry number, and that's not my name or my email, but I want to point out I filled out everything. Even though this is practice, everything, even the details at the top and both these fields at the bottom, because I want to be in practice for that, for the judging exam, because getting everything filled out only helps you. In fact, like leaving off is just, that's like leaving points on the table. This is basically the scoring method in a very broad stroke is you start off with as many points as possible and then things are taken away. Easiest way to take those away is to leave blank space on your score sheet. So we want to practice filling in everything, even though it's practice. Part of that practice is making sure it's in our heads, it's muscle memory, fill out every single bit of the score sheet. So, all right, with that said, let's get into this. So this was Category 1A, American Light Lager, special ingredients, none. Bottle inspection, that was appropriate. I wrote down as an aluminum bottle-shaped can, which is kind of an oxymoron, but that's what mine was. And going into aroma right away here, what I got when I really sat down and judged this beer without the guidelines, and my evaluation for aroma says light, sweet, grainy aroma up front, very delicate floral notes followed, grainy character is bready with a dry cracker character, sweet malt notes are clean and not overwhelming, fermentation character is exceptionally clean. And my score was 11 out of 12. For appearance, I did write and observe, and I'll actually mention something here as opposed, like not opposed to, but that kind of goes along with our initial review of this beer is light yellow in color, could not raise a substantial head on pour or second more aggressive re-pour. I did try to do another pour with holding the bottle higher in the air, or in this case, the aluminum bottle can higher in the air, could not raise that frothy white head that this style should be pouring at. Now that head does linger, but I could not pour a head on this at all. So I did note that. And I added to that the minimal head that formed was white and fell to a light dusting immediately. And I went 2 out of 3 on that. If this were a higher total point category, I would have taken more points away. But otherwise, everything was dead on. It was clear. The color was right. The head that did pour was the right color. It just was not frothy on pour, so I could only take 1 point away for that. For flavor, I wrote malt flavor presents lighter than aroma lets on. Light malt grainy character and a malt sweetness on the tongue and palate. An extremely delicate floral note that grows as the sample warms up. The faintest hint of bitterness on the finish that lingers momentarily in the aftertaste. An extremely clean fermentation. That was the end of the sentence. I'll show you. I wrote so much it went to the next one. I almost started reading the mouthfeel heading there. I went with 18 out of 20 on that. Close, but a little couple things here that I kind of go back over the overall impression. Actually, that's not entirely true. I talk more about the mouthfeel, if anything else in there, but really close to perfect to what I know the style as or understand the style as. Mouthfeel, I have very light in body. Beer does have a watery character that borders on watered down. This is unfortunately one of those things where I know what I mean by that. There's a difference between, in my mind, of being a watery beer and a beer that is mixed with water. This is one of those rare occasions where there's not enough room for me to write exactly what I want to describe that. Usually I'm stretching to fill in these lines, but this time I could have used another like 3, maybe 4 full lines to explain what I meant. So I had to kind of cut it off there. I went on and said, highly carbonated with a crisp carbonic bite, a light, smooth, cream-like texture, a hint of alcohol warmth, no astringency, very clear. Now, very clean. Why did I mention astringency? Because as I mentioned in the score sheet episodes, right there next to mouthfeel, it says comment on body, carbonation, warmth, creaminess, astringency, and other palate sensations. The carbonic bite kind of fits into that last part, but I'm mentioning astringency to have more on my paper than less. Again, that's something that only helps you in your judging exam to an extent. You don't want to write this beer is very, 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 very good. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about hitting all the notes of a beer characteristic, regardless if it should be in that style or not. And for the mouthfeel, I went with 3 out of 5. Thought that more water-like than watery character really detracted from the style, or a little bit. Considering it's a commercial example, I say really distracted from it. If I was tasting this on the homebrew level, it actually would be, I think, more of a compliment that they hit that kind of light watery note. Overall impression, a very refreshing, well-made beer, indicative of style. I think, in hindsight, I would have rather used the word representative of style, but it is what it is. That's what I wrote. Malt, hop, and yeast fermentation character are quite pleasant. The beer may be a touch too watery for style, presenting more as watered down than watery. I'm repeating what I wrote in mouthfeel, but I'm trying to reiterate that characteristic without having enough space or even time, because I'm trying to do this within 12 minutes, to say what I want to say. So I'm hoping by repeating it and even kind of rephrasing it slightly gets across the impression that I'm trying to give of what I find lacking in this beer. Not quite sure. This is a very good example of how to do that, but it is a challenge, and that's something that we will face in this process. So it was actually good to try to overcome that obstacle. A slight restraint on the thinning out of this beer may help. An extremely enjoyable beer for style. I had to put that for my own benefit because it is an American light lager and not many craft beer fans' favorite style. But for style, it's a very good example. I gave that an 8. Overall, I got a 42, which was surprising to me to see that it falls in the excellent category and not in the outstanding, considering it's a commercial example. But like we've said in the style guidelines section, there is no one perfect example. There's several very good to excellent examples, and this is one that falls into excellent. And I'm sure there's an outstanding one in there somewhere, at least on my palate. That's the other thing too. Palates, taste, and evaluations all differ. So my 42, maybe someone's 48. No telling. And for the style, for the characteristic matrix, or I'm not quite sure what this is called, this box I'm referring to right here at the bottom. I need to get its proper name. I've seen it. It's completely slipped my mind in this video. But for the first line, I went everything to the left, and that's the most positive side. So it's for stylistic accuracy, classic example. For technical merit, flawless. And for intangibles, wonderful. And I did go ahead and circle that score for quick reference, and again, to not leave any blank space behind on this score sheet. All right, that is it for 1A, American Light Lager. Obviously, a very good example. Actually, not a very good example. An excellent example, as I said myself on my score sheet, and which is going to be the case for most of the commercial examples, if not all of them, that are in the guidelines. And now that I've been through this, now that I have the memories, I've had the practice, I've been through the evaluation, I have the sensory memories to an extent of this beer, I have something to refer back to if I'm given an American Light Lager to judge in my judging exam. I at least have one if I have no other time, if I have no time to do any other American Light Lagers, I at least have this one to compare to. How is it the same? How is it different? Why is it different if it is? And what can I do about that if I were the brewer? What can I suggest to the brewer is actually more accurately to say. At least I have that. And that is exactly what these style sessions are for. And I encourage you to try one or two more. I might be in a minority as a trainer for something like this, an unofficial trainer, obviously, when I say I don't think it's the best idea to know every example. I think that muddies the waters a little too much. It's too much to compare to. But I do think more may be better than less. Really, it all depends on how you remember things and how you study. Me personally, just because of the situation I was in when I took my exam, I only had time to learn one, and it worked. It benefited me. I passed the test. I had a great score. But again, it's down to the individual and do what you're most comfortable with. But at least get one in. If you can find one example of each category, at least get that one in so you have something to refer to. And that's it. All right, we're moving on to the next one, which is 1B. American Lager, so a little more of the same, like literally just a little more of the same. So I'll see you in that next session.